Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I have a very special video for you. The concept of this video is going to be that I gave 3 of my producer friends a beat to play with, and I also challenged myself to make a song on top of it. What I essentially did is I sent a kick and a bass and some drums all together rendered out in an individual file. And I sent that file to 3 other producers who wrote a track on it. They added lead elements, they added vocals, they added a whole bunch of different things. And each of the producers is going to tell us a little bit about how they made the track, and then we'll all together react to the end results. Now I quickly want to say that this video is heavily inspired by Andrew Yang. He usually provides a very small sample and then they get to edit the sample, so I decided to put my own twist on it by saying that they cannot actually edit the sample that they're being given. They just need to layer on top extra elements to get to a full track. So with that out of the way, let's get right into it.
Thank you, Projektor, for inviting me to this little challenge. So he sent us a beat and we should all make our own version of a track. And I'm really excited to hear what the other producers did. Okay, I have what I want to talk about with you guys. So we're hitting full groove 49 and I want to show you quickly how easy actually it is to get like really going into that. And that's like a trick I use a lot. So first thing, usually have some elements which drive everything upwards to the moment. In this part, I think it's only this asset one here. See, it's subtle, but if you don't have it, it doesn't drive that much. Because it gets like really high in frequency, and I could actually have done it way more here. I could really get like that acid thing going on. The more I listen about that track, the more things actually I see which are missing here. That's a disease, the producer disease. The next thing is I have like a flanger here, and what I do is I take a lot of care to get things which are not sounding the same, to have them perfect in the right moment. So check that out. You see, it sounds different all the time. And you can see it's recording number 15. So you can see here. And I think that's an effort you should do. If you want to have like your track sounding really amazing, and I want to have that sliding in and hitting right on point here. And it's such a small detail, but I think it can bring your tracks to a much higher level if you have those things controlled. And that's why I actually love to have in the end audio, because audio is the control. With MIDI you never have the control. I mean, you have a lot of options. You can change more things in the beginning, but if you want to really be sure and want to have the final thing and want to get the most out of it, you will need audio in the end. You mean you can keep the MIDI as I did here. You can see sometimes I have like a second channel if I really want to keep it for because I want to brainstorm or do some else stuff. Without the audio, you're not achieving like the last percentage which you need to really get it banging here. The same here. So it's like really like dun 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 dun, and imagine it would be some other tone. For example, this one, it has that scream, but then it drops like immediately off. Then this, I don't know, it's a little bit too high for my taste. This is the same, it's not stable, you know? I want you to have something where you really feel the flanger coming down and exploding into that section. Otherwise, I don't have much stuff here. I think I have a little riser here as well to push it. And then I have this side riser here. So that's all I think which I have here to push this. Let's check if maybe I have in the mix added some stuff. I have also added like a little clap in that moment with a lot of reverb. which layers on top of the crash, and which gives a little bit more push in the mids. But those details are really important, and if you don't nail the drop, then the whole section will lose energy. And I want to show you quickly. Let's activate this so that we don't have the control over here. Let's remove the asset. And okay, the clap isn't there in that version, so. So that's really important to have those small, tiny details in the right moment controlled to push your track to the next level. Another thing I want to show you quickly, and yeah, it's something I do sometimes, and it might be not the right moment here in that arrangement. I feel, as we talked about techno tracks before, and techno, they do it a lot. I think they keep like a constant level, a little bit boring, repetitive, and then in techno, it's like that, they open the reverb, everything, the sound comes through, the melodies and everything, and the whole crowd cheers, and that's like the 5 minutes and 1 hour of techno, which people really enjoy. But I think you can do that in Psytrance as well. Sorry, I didn't want to bash techno. I love to actually go to techno parties sometimes, but I feel it has sometimes a bit much of that. But you can do that in Psytrance as well. You don't need to be especially boring, but I think sometimes to be repetitive can help you actually to unleash something which comes afterwards. So check this out. So there's not much going on. We have that asset, okay, it has some variation. We have that droney pad. So everything is a little bit suspending to that moment where we unleash the melody. And I think that makes the melody afterwards also stronger. So that's another thing about build up. So you can also have a very repetitive element and a very static tone. You need to take care that doesn't destroy kind of like the energy. So you still need to drive upwards. So I think that's the difference to techno. And techno, it's, for me, as maybe not as experienced listener than a techno producer would be, it's staying on a more static level. And I think if you want to pull off that concept on Psytrance, you need to kind of like have it static going up. So it's more like a constant rise, but I don't have like a lot of psychedelic elements and stuff in here to really unleash the next block. And that was also the intention of my track to kind of like bash here really hard and then have that little suspense in here and then going on another strong concept, but this time melodic and not so aggressive, to make that transition between those two parts. As said, it's a thing you need to be a bit careful because you can easily end up in a very boring territory, I think, which is not good. Your arrangement should usually look like up. And then when you're reaching the highest point, then you make like a break or something, and then you bring it up again. It's not like up, down, up, down, up, down. But I think here it fitted well, especially also because of the groove, the beat template I had. The beat was also going a bit down. You can basically see it here. We're a full beat here, full groove here, and then we're going down a bit in the beat, and that's what I used basically to pull off that arrangement here then. Thanks for the invite, and I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial as well. So if you want to get a little bit more insight in the track, I will do another walkthrough about this track on my own channel. So make sure that you also check out that one. And I would love to see you there. And thank you, Projektor, for the invite. And thank you guys for listening and watching.
Very cool, almost unharmonic soundscape in here. Very eerie.
I really like the sound design here, specifically in this part, and I think this part over here, the leads are really, really good.
Yes. Nice.
Nice strong acid line.
Yeah. Nice and psychedelic. Good one.
It was awesome to see all the different ideas that came out of this. Wow, it's actually hard to believe that these are all the same actual beats underneath. But it's also amazing to see how individual producers can be. So I want to discuss a couple of things in my version of the track that might be interesting for you folks. So I think, one of the things that I think really sticks out is a technique that I've been using to create really nice big swelling transitions, and a trick that I've picked up how to really get that to sound sweet is to modulate the size of the reverb. So what I've done here is I'm actually just going to quickly play the part that I'm talking about, and just a quick note that this does not work with all reverb plugins. I guess it's down to the kind of quality of the actual reverb plugin itself. So with this one, I've decided to go with Arturia's Rev Intensity. So I like to combine this kind of increase in size. So you see how like the intro is playing and we've got some pads going here. And as it swells to the kind of break before the kick and bass comes in, the size of the reverb starts to intensify. And you'll notice here also the dry-wet balance of the reverb goes from 0 at the beginning and kind of mixes in all the way, and then at the break it goes out again. And I generally like to combine this with a frequency shift just before the break, and this gives a really, really nice effect. The combination of these two, it's a kind of fantastic way of creating these huge swelling transition breaks. So yeah, let me give you an example of what that sounds like. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is how, when I was listening to the context of the remix or the project that I'm working on, I noticed that the transitions were somewhat timed. Here, for example, the filter of this break and the filter of this break are kind of similar, and then this has this kind of glitch effect here, which was really, really cool. And I had the track going, and I was like, what would be really cool is if we kind of replicated a glitch-like pattern like this, but with the entire kind of mix of all the synths, And I guess the old school way of doing this would be to just render it and then chop it as you need. But in this context, I've actually used Infiltrator. So here I've got a couple of layers. One is the looper, and you can see here it's modulating the frequency upwards and then sharply downwards. And then as that sharp downwards curve initiates, it does a vary speed, which basically just turns the speed down, and then as that initiates, it does a gain down. So I kind of tried to simulate this pattern, but inside Infiltrator, and then Infiltrator is loaded onto my synths group over here. So it's basically after that frequency shift and reverb, and then it's infiltrator. And so what I've done here is I've actually got a parameter that mixes infiltrator in. So let me just show you what this break sounds like without infiltrator, right? And notice how the leads, they're kind of sounding good, but they don't gel with the context. Do you know what I mean? They don't have the same kind of like break, stop, transition, bam. Does that make sense? And I feel like those things are so important in Psytrance to give it that kind of like the feeling of like everything gelling together. You know what I mean? Okay, now let me show you with the transition effect. And then I've used the same thing, or the same effect, but to kind of varying degrees throughout all of the different breaks in the track to kind of really get the stuff that I was making to fit with the context material.
Nice chords, nice high atmosphere.
I really love the beautiful intro. It's kind of like your nature birds flying up.
Yes.
All kinds of low, mid-range synths in there. Wobble synth really ties everything together. This is the high energy part. I like that it's the main synth is almost like a melody going up and down, but with the filter cut off. That's really cool. If you're enjoying the video so far, I hope that you would consider subscribing. Also, if you haven't noticed yet, at the end of last year I put out an album. If you want to support me in my musical journey, then you should consider listening to the album on streaming services or potentially buying it on Bandcamp. There are also individual licenses available if you want to remix one or more of the tracks. Finally, there's a package of the whole album. If you either want to remix the whole album, you can do so, and you'll save a little bit of money. But seeing as these include each individual sound of the tracks, you can also use them as mixing exercises to further your mixing skills. With that being said, let's get back into the video.
Okay, let's have a look what we've got here for this competition. We have 16 bars intro, the introduction of kick and bass, again 16 bars kick and bass, then kick and bass plus hats, then snare and percussions added to everything, then kick and bass and percussions, the hats are gone, then kick and bass only, and then the outro. Meaning we have here the element introduction for 3 times 16 bars, the full power section, then the, not sure what I should call this one, because here the elements are removed and again removed. Here it's preparing for the outro, and then the outro. Yeah, this is not easy, and I decided to try something like this. I have Atmos that I will bring in here. I have the introduction of the grid. I will have the grid playing full and introducing the arpeggio. I will have the arpeggio playing full in the full power section. So here is the highest peak of everything. Then there is, from my point of view, the place where the track is made or broken. I marked it as a rhythm something. I will introduce a melody here. I will have a melody playing in the last part and then having the outro. Furthermore, I try to have a very, very strong hook with the idea that people will remember the track. First, I needed a hook, and since it's always something about storytelling, I had this story in mind, and with story there was the fairy tale, and with that everything started. I created a little story in a fairy tale style, and I was using text-to-speech AI services to create me the vocals, also the beginning and the end, plus the once upon a time in another voice. And with this once upon a time, because that's how a story starts, I had the hook. As you can see here at the beginning, I am a little longer than I should, but it was the only way to have my vocal played correctly until bar 33, which is where the first drop really starts with kick and bass. Here I was cheating a little bit, but yeah. With the outro, more or less the same. With the outro, I had the end of the story with they lived happily ever after. As mentioned, the arrangement was for me a little difficult, and the reason is the common Psytrance arrangement looks something like this. There are 32 bars intro, 64 bars part 1, 64 bars part 2, 32 bars break, 64 bars part 3, outro. Now, if we just have a look at part 1, there are some focus points, meaning the first 16 bars, they belong to kick and bass. If you remember that, you will choose your elements in a way that they will not draw the attention from kick and bass. The next 16 bars belong to the snare. This is a strong new element for the listener, and from my point of view, it should be introduced here, or maybe latest at bar 65. Then the next 16 bars belong to the grid. Here the grid has to play full. And then the last 16 bars, they belong to the arpeggio. That's the main focus on the last, or at the end of this part 1 here. Now, if I enter my ideas, you can see I use Atmos so that kick and bass are in the focus. There was no snare, so I had to get along with just introducing the grid, which is a good idea because you cannot have just this and then the next and then the next and then the next. You have to have a transition, also meaning the ARP has to, or the grid has to start when the snare is full, but the focus is on the snare. The grid is not played completely. And then when the grid is playing full, the next thing is introduced, as in this case the arpeggio, but it's only playing parts of it, or it's filtered out or whatever. And then the arpeggio is playing full. To be honest, the grid could actually play underneath the arpeggio here. I didn't do it because I wanted to have a strong difference between in between the parts, because this is the main part in this arrangement. After that, it's actually not part 1 anymore. Here should be the break or a part 2. That was a little bit confusing, so I said part 2 is about rhythm normally, also meaning it should be different from part 1 and part 3, and it should be rhythm based. This is why I try to do something rhythmic here in these 16 bars, as well as introducing the melody, which is normally part of the break or when it's introduced. Here I had to make a mixture somehow. And these were this is a little bit my arrangement in details with some focus points. If you remember the focus points, you are selecting your sounds better, if you keep that in mind.
Once upon a time, there were some music producers who were on a mission to make the world a better place. They believed that the power of dance could bring people together and help them to let go of their problems.
Nice vocal
They worked
effect.
tirelessly, spending long hours in the studio perfecting that craft. They watched as people from all walks of life came together on the dance floor, united by their shared love of psychedelic trance.
Once upon a time.
I like how well this fits with the drums that were originally in the beat.
Once upon a time. Once upon a time.
In the end, Dash, Andy, Bram and Mark succeed in their mission. They had brought joy and unity to people all over the globe. And they lived happily ever after, knowing that they had made a real difference in the world through their music.
Oh my gosh, that vocal. Oh, it's cool. I love it.
There's a beginning stage of not knowing and there's an ending stage. When you get beyond that.
So for my track, I struggled a lot. I had a lot of different issues with the different sounds that I wanted to implement. I ran through maybe about 10 different main leads that I wanted to include here. And every time I made some main leads, I also made some one-shots to complement them. In the end, all of the main leads didn't really fit the track, so I decided to just keep it to one-shots. That means that the main portion of my track is just a whole bunch of different small little sounds played together in a fast-paced manner. You can see here, if I zoom into the main part of the drop where all of the one-shots are, that there's a whole bunch of different sounds even layered on top of each other, but they're basically all kind of in its own space and they're doing their own thing. They also follow fairly strict arrangement rules. As you can see, the spacing between elements is always the same. This is 4 bars and then this is 4 bars. This is 8 bars and then this is 8 bars, which makes it so that even though the track is fairly chaotic in this portion, it is still very organized. There are some sounds that only play once, so for example this sound does not repeat in the second half. We have some sounds that only play in the second half right here. Here's another sound that just plays in the first half. In terms of sound design itself, I'm not going to go into detail on the individual sounds in this breakdown. What I'm going to do is make a longer breakdown video in which I can go over the actual sound design. But I can play some of the sounds soloed. So here's one of the sounds. Nice aggressive impact. We have this one. Some of my favorites are these sounds. Nice and drippy and wet sounding. Here we have a nice dark big saw stab. We have some squelches layered in there. Another synth that sounds fairly wet, fairly clicky as well. We have some more electronic sounding sounds as well. So for example this stuff. Or this stuff here. As you can hear, overall great collection of lead sounds. So that's kind of the main drop area where all of the energy sits. But for the rest of the track, I really wanted to incorporate a lot more atmospheric elements. So if we look into my pads group, that's usually where I also have my atmospheres. One of the main atmospheres is this one here. I also decided to add some distorted sounds and some kind of real life instruments like these. These are a bit darker sounds and they add a little bit of more of a background kind of feeling to them. There's another one here. little bit of a distorted flute, that kind of thing. It really ties these flute elements together with this distorted element, kind of a mixture of the two. So that's really what's building up the soundscape of the track in the less energetic parts of the track. They also help with what is happening in the intro. You can hear there's some atmospheres that just help what the intro is doing. And you can hear that in the second part of the intro there's really space for the vocals to come through. So these are the main vocals that I used for the track. I just found this on the internet somewhere.
You see, there's a beginning stage of not knowing and there's an ending stage. In the beginning stage, you don't know what you want because you haven't thought about it. Then when somebody forces you to think about it and go through and say, there's the middle stage. Then you get beyond that.
That gives a nice little bit of a delay tail going into the first drop. This is in the beat where the first drop starts after 16 bars, as you can see here. Together with some extra vocal atmospheres, this is actually what builds up the intro. Then one final interesting thing that I did is I took the main vocals of the track and I kind of warped them a little bit and then used the texture mode to get these kind of granular sounding vocals.
You don't know what you want. Reach the state of desirelessness.
These sit towards the end of the drop and they give it a little bit more of a metallic feeling towards the end. This part of the drop was really where I wanted to hammer down the vocals one more time so that you really get the idea of what the track is about throughout the whole project. So that's how I build up the track. I hope that you're going to enjoy it. If you're interested, I'll be posting a full breakdown of this track in a later video, so if you're not subscribed already, I definitely suggest that you do so.
You see, there's a beginning stage of not knowing and there's an ending stage. In the beginning stage, you don't know what you want because you haven't thought about it. Then when somebody forces you to think
Good
about
vocal.
it, you go through and say, "There's
Like
the
it.
middle stage." Then you get beyond that.
Super psychedelic.
When you don't know what you want, you reach the state of desirelessness. There's a beginning stage of not knowing and there's an ending stage. Then you get beyond that.
cool.
So those were all 4 tracks, all 4 very, very nice sounding, very different. It's really cool to see how each individual producer took their own spin to an existing beat and how they really took the time to put their individual identity into the track. It's really cool to see the different types of sound design that the different producers use. Obviously, I hope that it goes without saying, if you're interested in more of their content, you can follow the other producers as well. I'll leave links in the description where you can find them, both to their channels as well as obviously to their music. So I hope you enjoyed the video. It took a while to organize and to make, but I hope it was worth it. You can let me know by leaving a like, that way I can see if you guys are interested in more of this type of concept. If you have ideas for future challenges that we can maybe do, maybe with a different group of producers, then definitely let me know in the comments down below, and maybe your idea gets featured on a future episode if I decide to turn this into a series. But that's everything for the video. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.